They asked me about my Twitch bans, chat. It's not even a joke. They asked me about Twitch chat, like Twitch bans. The reason for why they're doing that is, I think, to try to create an environment of fear, to try to get people like myself, or at least like others that would be in my shoes that don't have that same level of security, to shut the fuck up.
So it only took about 100 days, but we're here. Political commentators are now being detained, being questioned by border agents. In this case, the fascists have started with Hasan Piker. You saw in that clip. We're going to show you more. He's a former colleague of mine, Jordan, as well. Importantly, American citizen, member of the media. Add however many other qualifiers you need to make it even crazier that he was questioned for stuff that he might have tweeted or might have said on Twitch or whatever. But there he's being hassled by them. And thankfully he was eventually released for now. I guess this was the warning shot across the bow. God knows what's coming next, either for Hasan Piker or for other members of the media. And obviously, since we know him and we do similar sort of work, Jordan and I are gonna have a lot to say about this. But first, I wanna give Hasan a chance to explain more about what actually happened.
He knew exactly who the fuck I was, but he was basically like, he always made it seem as though he was asking certain things that after discovering in the process of that conversation, he would ask additional questions. So he kept saying, "What do you do as a job? Do you talk about the news?" And I was like, "Yeah, I talk about the news." And he kept saying, "Okay, so when you talk about the news, do you talk about the war?" And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" He's like, "Do you talk about Trump?" And that was the first time where I was like, what the is this question? Like, I literally straight up told him, I was like, "Why are you asking me this?" Like, I was like, what does this have to do with anything? Yeah, they asked me about my Twitch bans, chat. It's not even a joke. They asked me about Twitch chat, like Twitch bans. The reason for why they're doing that is, I think, to try to create an environment of fear, to try to get people like myself, or at least like others that would be in my shoes that don't have that same level of security, to shut the fuck up. And for me, I'm gonna use the privilege that I have in that moment to try and see what the fuck they're doing, okay?
So obviously he went on more length. You can watch his stream, or you can find the clips and everything where he explains more of what happened, his strategy, and how he thinks that he might have said too much, but thankfully did end up getting released. But the questions that they asked him, well, the ones that he cited there, I mean, we're in exactly the place that many of us feared we would be. Do you talk about Trump? You're a member of the media and you're being questioned with the threat possibly of being disappeared, sent to Illinois, sent to El Salvador, God only knows what, because maybe Marco Rubio says that Hasan Piker is hurting the US's foreign policy. Maybe Alien Enemies Act. There's an invasion after all. Maybe Hasan Piker needs to go to CCOT or whatever. And so when political commentators are being asked, do you talk about the president? That's about as dark as I think it can get. And Jordan, I'm gonna bring you in here. I have a friend who, he follows politics, but not as much. He knows my job and everything. And like he for like the last few months has been telling me like, don't fly into Texas or whatever. And I keep thinking, as critical as I am of the fascists and Trump and all of that, like that's too far. Come on, they're not gonna like stop a commentator or whatever. And obviously I'm not as high profile as Hasan, so I'm probably gonna be fine. Although we're really outspoken about Israel and the genocide as well, and that could very well be the topic that has gotten Hasan to be put on whatever list he was on, to be pulled aside. And so I don't know, like Hasan, you do this sort of commentary too. What do you make of them having stopped him and questioned him like this?
I mean, it's a legitimate concern for anybody traveling out of the country. Upon reentry, you really don't have any rights. And I did a video for The Intercept a few weeks ago, showing people how they can prepare if they think they might be pulled aside for questioning. And you see people like Hasan who have a high profile, who have talked about US foreign policy, who have talked about groups that the US deems as terrorist organizations, like the Houthis, like Hezbollah. He's covering them, he's analyzing geopolitical situations, but ultimately on the issue of Israel and Palestine and Israel and Gaza, he is critical of US foreign policy. That justification has been used by, like you say, Marco Rubio, to apprehend foreign college students, saying that their thoughts, their writing, their activism jeopardizes or undermines US foreign policy objectives. Well, we know that it's ludicrous. What are you going to do? And when you're re-entering, you don't have any rights. You can't, in most cases, call a lawyer. You can be searched. You can have your devices searched, scanned, all your data uploaded. And if you refuse, even as a citizen, they can seize your devices. So there are steps that you can take. Civil liberties groups have put out little checklists. It's something that everyone should consider upon reentry. But this is very chilling.
Yeah, 100%. And we might have an idea of the rights we have, but I also, I mean, I'm paying attention to politics today. I was paying attention on was a Friday when Stephen Miller was like, yeah, habeas corpus, maybe not. Maybe we won't have that soon. You know what? Just because, inconvenient, slows things down. There's so many brown people we got to get rid of. So maybe you just don't have any due process anymore. And so, look, I don't know, Jordan, what's going to get through to people, like about how bad this is, how little respect there is for due process, for people's rights. Like simultaneously we have migrants, full legal residents, with people with green cards being shipped away, no rights whatsoever. We have students being targeted explicitly just for op-eds. Just no violence, no advocacy, just literally op-eds. You can be gone. Thankfully, the judges have pushed back a little bit on some of that, although not on all of that. We have members of Congress being hauled away. We have threats constantly to lock up more of them. Tom Homan cannot appear on Fox News without talking about how much he deeply fantasizes about closing a cell on AOC. And now independent, commentators, analysts, whatever you want to call it, also, if not being locked up, at least a message being sent like, hey, you guys better chill out, relax a little, because you might get hauled away. And so it's really scary times. Any other thoughts?
No, you're right. I think they picked him because they knew that what they did would get a wider reach. And the message and the intent is to scare people into silence, to scare people into complicity. And when we look at what they're doing to undocumented people or foreign college students, activists, that's just the start. You are naive if you think it'll begin and end there. Like when you look at Stephen Miller's comments, like you talk about, they're going to continue to justify further encroachments on our rights. That's how it's going to go. They're not just going to do the worst possible thing in the first 100 days. This is just the starting point. So I think people need to take this seriously. People need to fight back. And while I don't have any hope, you would want to think that there are some people who claim to be principled constitutional conservatives on the right to speak out about this, but none of them have a backbone. None of them are principled. They're all opportunists, and they like to invoke that label, that branding for some sort of personal self-aggrandizement exercise, but none of them are sincere in that.
Yeah, in the same way that, I mean, we've been talking about, like, they have literal, like, Pete Hegseth has his list of the words you're not allowed to have in an email, like the word police, and like all these people who love the First Amendment, very little to say on that. And we try to give them credit pointlessly. I don't know why we do it, but we try to give them credit when they're consistent. Like, Joe Rogan was like, hey, are we the baddies when it comes to immigration? We gave him credit for that. Alex Jones pushed back against, I think, the due process thing, or it was something earlier about that. And some of them don't like that he's taking the plane. And that's good. I'm glad that they're pushing back on that, but that is just a tiny little piece of the bigger part of this full-scale assault on our civil rights and liberties.